The palace of the alien queen was the most magnificent place in the galaxy. Tall towers of shining metal stretched into the sky, and glowing crystals lit every corner. But inside the palace, the air was thick with worry. The alien queen's daughter, Princess Lyria, had refused to eat for 7 long days. No food, no drink, nothing to convince her. Doctors, scientists, and even royal chefs had tried everything, but nothing worked. The palace, which was usually full of life and music, was now silent and tense. The queen, a tall and regal figure with eyes that could pierce through steel, paced the golden halls. She was feared across the galaxy, but her heart now trembled with fear. "Why won't she eat?" she demanded to royal advisors. "They don't know, Your Majesty," said one of the chief scientists nervously. "We have tried every known method. There is nothing more we can do with technology or medicine." The guards whispered among themselves, their faces pale. "She might die. The whole royal line could be at risk," one said. The tension was everywhere. Every member of the palace felt the heaviness. Meanwhile, in the shadowy corridors of the palace, a human janitor quietly pushed a mop. His name was Ethan. He was a simple man, dressed in a plain uniform, carrying buckets and cleaning rags. No one in the palace paid much attention to him. Humans were rare here, and he was considered lowly. Ethan moved silently, cleaning the shining floors. He heard the whispers of the servants about the princess, but he did not speak. He had his own thoughts. Life had taught him to stay small, to avoid attention. But even he felt a strange sadness in the palace. When he reached the princess's wing, he stopped. The doors were closed, but he could hear faint sobs inside. Princess Lyria, usually full of energy and life, was sitting by a large window, staring out at the stars. Her small shoulders shook with silent tears. Ethan felt a tug at his heart. He had grown up in a human colony on a small mining planet, far from this majestic palace. Life had been harsh, but he had learned to notice small things, to care quietly. And now he could not ignore this. He took a deep breath and slowly pushed the door open. A soft squeak sounded, but he kept moving forward. Princess Lyria's large, golden eyes turned toward him. She did not smile, but she did not look angry either. For 7 days, no one had entered her room, and no one had made her look at them. Yet she looked at Ethan. "Hello," Ethan said softly. I am here to clean." The princess watched him, her small fingers clenched in her lap. Ethan moved carefully, not wanting to startle her. He set down his cleaning supplies gently and knelt a little, making himself smaller. I brought something," he said, holding a small container of simple human food. "It is not fancy, but maybe you'd like to try?" Lyria's eyes widened. She stared at the food, then at him. For a long moment, neither moved. Then, slowly, she reached out her tiny hand and touched the container. Ethan smiled softly. "Just a little bite," he whispered. She took a bite, and then another. Her golden eyes shone with tears, but this time, they were different. They were not sad, they were alive. Outside the room, the palace staff gasped. How could a simple human janitor do what no scientist or doctor could? How could he reach her when everyone else had failed? The queen, hidden behind a tall golden screen, watched silently. Her heart skipped a beat. This was unexpected. This human, this lowly, ordinary human, was the first to make her daughter eat. Ethan continued to offer small bites, speaking softly, telling her small stories about his life on the mining planet. Lyria listened, fascinated. She did not speak much, but she ate slowly, carefully, as if savoring not just the food but the moment itself. Hours passed. Sunlight faded, and the stars outside shone brighter. Princess Lyria, for the first time in a week, smiled. It was small, almost shy, but it was there. Ethan smiled too, quietly. He did not want to boast or draw attention. He only wanted to help. In the palace corridors, rumors spread like wildfire. The human janitor had done what no one else could. Guards whispered each other, and servants peeked at the room. Even the advisors, who were proud and confident, felt their jaws drop. But not everyone was happy. Some of the royal generals frowned. A human? Controlling the princess? This is unacceptable, one muttered. But the queen raised her hand, and silence fell. She stepped out from behind the screen, her long robes flowing. Her eyes, sharp and bright, rested on Ethan. "You are the one who helped her eat?" she asked, her voice calm but heavy with authority. Ethan bowed. "Yes, your majesty. I only wanted to help," he said simply. The queen studied him for a long moment. He was just a human. Ordinary, small, weak by alien standards. But somehow, he had reached her daughter's heart. And that was more powerful than any technology, any weapon, any magic the aliens had. "Remarkable," the queen said finally. "Very remarkable." Meanwhile, Princess Lyria clung lightly to Ethan's hand. She felt safe, protected, and understood. No one else had ever made her feel this way. The palace, full of grandeur and power, suddenly seemed less important than this small human who had entered her life. But as the stars shone over the palace, the tension outside did not vanish. Not everyone would accept this change. Some saw a threat. A human having influence over the princess could lead to trouble. Generals whispered, scientists fumed, and some servants were angry. Ethan, however, remained humble. He cleaned the floors, he offered food, and he told gentle stories. He did not try to show off. He did not demand power. And yet, something unexpected had happened. The princess had smiled, had eaten, had trusted him. It was a turning point. Something in the palace had shifted, quietly but surely. Everyone could feel it, though they could not name it. And in that quiet, unseen moment, a human janitor had changed the course of the royal palace, without even realizing it. As night deepened, Princess Lyria finally spoke, her voice small but clear. Stay with me." Ethan nodded. "I will," he said. And in that moment, neither of them noticed the shadows moving outside the window. Eyes watched them from the corners of the palace. Curious and wary, the unexpected turning point had arrived. But the story was only beginning. The galaxy was vast, and powerful forces were at work. But inside the Golden Palace, a simple human had made a difference. And that difference, though small, was enough to shake the foundations of what everyone thought was possible. The first night passed with peace. Lyria ate slowly, spoke softly, and even laughed a little. Ethan told her small stories of stars, dust, and distant worlds. She listened, eyes wide with wonder, and for the first time, she felt a sense of hope. Outside the palace walls, the wind carried whispers. "Did you see? The princess she ate," servants whispered. "A human?" Guards muttered, confused and fearful. But inside the room, none of that mattered. There was only Ethan, Princess Lyria, and the unexpected turning point that had begun quietly, without alarms, without fanfare. The stars sparkled, the palace slept, and the galaxy held its breath. Tomorrow, the challenges would return. Tomorrow, the human and the princess might face more danger, more suspicion, more tests. But tonight, for the first time in 7 days, Princess Lyria had eaten. And in doing so, she had begun a journey that no one, not even the mighty alien queen, could have predicted. The morning sun poured through the tall crystal windows of the alien queen's palace. The golden halls glimmered, but the tension from yesterday had not vanished. Whispers followed Ethan as he walked down the corridors with his cleaning cart. Humans were not trusted in this palace, and yet something about this man had caught everyone's attention. Even the queen, who ruled with unmatched power, was watching him quietly from her private chamber. Ethan did not notice the attention. He moved with quiet purpose, mopping floors, wiping tables, and pushing the cart through silent hallways. His uniform was plain, his boots scuffed, and his hands were calloused. Yet, every movement showed care, patience, and kindness. He was invisible in the eyes of most. But Princess Lyria had already seen him differently. In her private room, Lyria sat by the window, her golden hair catching the sunlight. The day before, she had eaten. She had smiled. And for the first time in a week, she had felt alive. Her mother's advisors had insisted she rest. But Lyria could not wait to see Ethan again. When Ethan arrived, she did not speak at first. She just watched him move across the room, cleaning quietly. His presence, calm and simple, made her feel safe. She had never known that a human, weak, ordinary, and small, could hold so much strength and kindness alone. "Good morning," Ethan said softly, kneeling slightly to reach her level. "I brought breakfast." Lyria's eyes widened. It was not fancy food like the royal chefs prepared. It was simple bread, fruit, and some stew, but it smelled of warmth, of care. She picked up the plate, hesitated, and then took a small bite. You don't need to stay here," she said quietly. "No one else does." Ethan smiled gently. "I want to stay. You need someone, and I am here." She studied him. Humans were unpredictable, weak in body, yes, but somehow this one had more courage than many warriors she had seen. And more than courage, he had patience, a quality rare in the palace, where power and pride ruled every action. As they sat together, a quiet bond began to grow. Ethan told her small stories of his life on his home planet. Stories of mining rocks under harsh suns, of small victories, of simple joys. Lyria listened, fascinated. She had lived a life of luxury and command, yet she had never heard stories like these. She felt a connection she could not explain. Meanwhile, outside the room, the palace had started to stir with whispers of suspicion. Generals and advisors met in hushed rooms. "A human influencing the princess?" One general muttered. "This cannot be allowed. He is weak, but his influence, it is dangerous." "We must observe him," said another. "We cannot let the queen be embarrassed. The princess must not be controlled by someone like him." The queen, hearing these words, raised a hand. "Patience," she said. "I will judge for myself. Do not act hastily." But even she could not deny her curiosity. Who was this human? And why had he done what no alien could? Back in the princess's room, Ethan noticed something odd. The princess's appetite was improving, but there were moments when she would stop eating suddenly. Her eyes would widen, her small hands would tremble, and she would stare at the doorway. "What is it?" Ethan asked gently. She shook her head. "Nothing," she whispered. "Just shadows. Sometimes I see them." Ethan nodded. He did not question her further. He had learned long ago that fear could not be forced away with words. It had to be faced slowly, with patience and care. That night, Ethan stayed late. The palace was silent except for the hum of machinery and the occasional footsteps of guards. Lyria was awake, reading an old book she had never opened before. Ethan sat nearby, cleaning a small corner. "You never sleep much," Lyria said softly. Ethan shrugged. "Sleep comes when it comes. Besides, I like to watch over things quietly." "You watch over me," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. Ethan looked up. Their eyes met. In that moment, the distance between human and alien vanished. There was no difference in species, no barrier of rank, only two souls, finding trust in each other. But not everyone in the palace was happy with this bond. That night, a shadow moved silently through the corridors. A spy from a rival alien faction had entered the palace. They had heard of the human janitor and the princess. They wanted to know how a simple human could influence the royal line. The spy watched Ethan, saw his calm movements, and noted Lyria clinging to him. The report would be sent immediately to the generals outside. Soon, suspicion and fear would grow. The next morning, Ethan and Lyria walked through the palace gardens. She laughed for the first time in days. Birds perched on glowing branches, and small streams reflected the sunlight. "I never knew the palace could feel alive," she said. Ethan smiled. "Life is alive everywhere, even in small things. You just have to notice it." Their laughter was interrupted by a sudden shout. Guards ran past them, red lights flashing in the corridors. Something was wrong. The spy had been discovered, and in a few moments, the palace would be filled with panic. The queen appeared, her robes flowing, eyes sharp as ever. "Ethan," she said, her voice calm but commanding, "come with me." Ethan followed, carrying nothing but his calm presence. Lyria watched, confused and scared. In the private chamber, the queen faced him. "You have done something remarkable," she said. "You reached my daughter where no one else could. But now you are noticed, and not all who notice are friends." Ethan frowned. "I only wanted to help her eat. That is all." "Help her eat, and now you hold influence over her mind," the queen said. "Power is dangerous in this palace. You must understand that." Ethan nodded. I understand, Your Majesty, but I will do no harm. I only want to protect her. The queen studied him. Humans were strange creatures, weak by alien standards, yet sometimes stronger than the mightiest warrior. And Ethan was exactly that. Meanwhile, Lyria returned to her room, her small hands clenched in worry. She had felt safe with Ethan. Now, the tension of the palace seemed to press down even harder. She whispered softly, "Please, don't let them hurt him." Ethan, overhearing her, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I will not leave. I promise." Days passed. Ethan continued his simple life in the palace, cleaning floors, bringing meals, and sharing stories. Lyria grew stronger, her health returning, her appetite increasing, and yet the shadow of suspicion lingered. The generals and spies were watching. One night, a loud alarm rang through the palace. Guards rushed past, shouting an alarm. The queen appeared, her eyes flashing. "Intruders," she said. "They have breached the outer defenses." Ethan instinctively moved to protect Lyria. The princess looked at him with wide eyes. "What do we do?" she asked. Ethan smiled softly. "We stay calm. We face them together." Together, they moved to a safe room. The palace shook with the sounds of battle outside. The human janitor, small and ordinary, stood tall beside the alien princess. And in that moment, the impossible began to seem possible. For the first time, the palace saw that bravery and kindness were not limited to warriors and queens. Sometimes, a simple human could change everything. The night was long. Shadows moved, alarms rang, and the tension never left. But inside their small room, Ethan and Lyria found a strange peace. Stories were told, food was shared, and trust grew. By the time the first light of dawn touched the palace towers, the intruders had been repelled. The queen's forces had won the battle, but the palace had changed. The generals who had doubted Ethan now looked at him differently. The princess had found her protector, and the galaxy would soon learn that the smallest, simplest human could hold the greatest strength. And as the stars faded, Lyria whispered once more, "You are not just a human. You are my friend, my protector." Ethan smiled. "And you are not just a princess. You are brave. Together, we are stronger." The unexpected bond had grown. And though the palace and the galaxy were full of danger, one thing was certain. Ethan, the human nobody, had become the most important person in the life of the alien queen's daughter. The palace had returned to its routine, or at least that was what everyone believed. Princess Lyria's laughter echoed softly through the halls, and Ethan continued his quiet life, cleaning floors and sharing simple stories with her. Outside the golden walls, whispers of danger grew louder. Not all were pleased with the human janitor's growing influence. Alien generals, proud and ruthless, could not accept that an ordinary human had touched the heart of the princess. They had begun to plot. Secret messages passed through hidden channels, and spies moved silently through the palace. Their mission was clear. Find a reason to discredit Ethan, to make the queen doubt him, and to regain control over her daughter. Ethan, as always, remained unaware of the danger. He had grown used to shadows in the corners, the curious stares of servants, and the occasional whispers. He had learned patience. He had learned caution. But even his careful nature could not foresee the storm coming. It began subtly. A tray of food for the princess was mysteriously poisoned. The palace chefs panicked. But Ethan noticed before Lyria could take a bite. He had a habit of smelling and testing each meal, a simple human instinct. When he saw the strange aroma, he quickly pulled it away. "Be careful," he whispered to the princess. "Someone does not want you well." Lyria's eyes widened. "Who would do this?" Ethan shook his head. "I do not know, but I will protect you." Meanwhile, in a shadowed corridor, a spy from the rival faction observed Ethan. They recorded his movements, taking notes, and reporting back to the generals. "The human is clever, but too clever," the spy muttered. "He notices everything. He could ruin our plans." The generals, hearing this, decided on a dangerous plan. They would frame Ethan for an attempt on the princess's life. If the queen believed him guilty, he would be removed. Simple, effective, and cruel, That night, while Ethan was cleaning near the princess's quarters, a loud alarm rang. Guards rushed past him, shouting in panic. Lyria ran to his side, clutching his arm. "What is happening?" she cried. "The palace, it's under attack," Ethan said calmly, though his heart raced. Shadows moved in the halls, masked figures, armed and fast, trying to breach the inner chambers. Ethan grabbed the princess's hand and led her to a hidden corridor. He knew every corner of the palace, every secret passage. But even he could not anticipate the full scale of the attack. The intruders had one goal: chaos. They wanted to frighten the princess, to distract the guards, and to make Ethan appear responsible for the breach. As alarms blared and lasers flashed, Ethan protected Lyria, moving her through the palace shadows. He used small tricks, simple tools, and his human intuition to avoid traps and dangerous corridors. For the first time, his ordinary skills became extraordinary in the alien palace. The princess watched him, amazed. You are not just a janitor," she whispered. "You are brave." Ethan smiled faintly. "I am human. We survive with what we have." Meanwhile, the general's plan unfolded. Evidence was planted to suggest that Ethan had opened doors for the intruders. Servants whispered, "He did it." The human betrayed the princess. The queen, hearing of the attack and the supposed betrayal, summoned Ethan immediately. "You," she said, her voice cold and sharp. "Explain yourself. Did you open the doors for the intruders?" Ethan shook his head, confused and hurt. "No, I protected the princess. I stayed with her the entire time." But the queen had to see the evidence. The spies had placed security recordings showing Ethan near the main doors just moments before the intruders entered. It looked like he had led them in. Lyria, clutching Ethan's arm, cried, "Mother, he is lying. He saved me. He protected me." The queen's eyes narrowed. She had seen Ethan care for her daughter, yes, but the evidence was hard to ignore. And in a palace built on control and order, suspicion could not be ignored. "You must leave," the queen said finally. "Until this is resolved, you cannot be near the princess." Ethan's heart sank. He had only tried to help. He had only wanted to protect her. And now, he was being cast out, blamed for something he did not do. That night in a small, dimly lit holding room, Ethan sat quietly. He thought of the princess, of the palace, of the galaxy that seemed so far away. He was tired, yes, but he was not defeated. Humans had survived worse than this. He would find a way. Meanwhile, Lyria could not sleep. She slipped quietly from her quarters, moving to the holding room where Ethan was kept. Her small hands trembled as she spoke softly. "Ethan, I know you did not do this. You saved me." Ethan looked up. "Princess, you should not be here. They will punish you." She shook her head. "I do not care. I know the truth. I trust you, and I will not let them take you away from me." The next morning, the queen called for a council. Generals, advisors, and scientists gathered. The spy reports were laid out. Evidence pointed to Ethan. Witnesses claimed they saw him act suspiciously. Ethan, standing tall despite his situation, spoke calmly. "I only ever wanted to protect Princess Lyria. I did not know who attacked the palace. But I promise I had no part in it." The queen studied him, her eyes sharp as blades. Trust was difficult for her, and deception had always lurked in the palace. But she remembered the days when Ethan had saved her daughter, had brought her back to life after 7 days of silence. Could she believe that a human so small, so ordinary, could be loyal? Lyria stepped forward, holding a small pendant close to her heart. "Mother, he is telling the truth. He saved me. He protected me when no one else could. You must believe me." The queen's face softened slightly, but her advisors were not convinced. "Your Majesty," one general said, "humans are unpredictable. They can turn on us at any time. How can we trust them?" The queen looked at Ethan. She had ruled for decades, and she knew cunning when she saw it, but she also knew courage and loyalty. And in the eyes of this human, she saw something rare: honesty, humility, and bravery beyond measure. "Very well," she said finally. "We will investigate further. But until then, Ethan, you remain here under watch. One wrong move and the consequences will be yours." Ethan nodded. He understood. He would endure. Humans survive worse, yes, but this palace was different. He had to protect Lyria, and for that, he would face anything. That evening, as he returned to Princess's room, Lyria smiled softly. "They may doubt us," she whispered. "But I do not. I trust you, Ethan. Always." Ethan smiled faintly, placing protective hand over hers. "And I will always protect you, no matter what comes." But the shadows in the palace corridors were growing longer. Spies whispered each other, plots thickened, and enemies watched silently. The attack had been repelled, yes, but the danger was far from over. And somewhere in the dark corners of the galaxy, rival factions prepared for their next move. They had seen the power of a human protecting an alien princess, and they would stop at nothing to destroy it. The palace had survived the first wave, but the storm was far from over, and Ethan, the human nobody, had just become the most wanted and most trusted person in the galaxy at the same time. He did not know it yet, but the coming days would test everything he had, his courage, his wits, and his loyalty. And through it all, Princess Lyria would be his anchor, the reason he survived and the reason he fought. For the first time in the galaxy, a simple human had challenged the power of an empire, and that challenge had only just begun. The palace had never been quieter, yet the tension in the air was almost visible. Princess Lyria sat near the window of her quarters, her small hands clutching a thin blanket. The night before had been long. Whispers of spies, framed accusations, and the mysterious attacks still echoed through the golden halls. Yet, there was one constant in the princess's life. Ethan. Ethan, the human nobody, walked silently through the corridors, a mop in one hand and a small utility knife in his belt. He wasn't armed like the palace guards, nor did he possess alien technology. But he carried something far more powerful. Courage, intuition, and an unbreakable will to protect the princess. A sudden alarm shattered the calm. Red lights flashed across the walls and sirens wailed. The palace was under attack again. But this time, the intruders were stronger, faster, and better equipped. Ethan's heart beat rapidly, but his mind was sharp. He immediately grabbed Princess Lyria's hand. "Come with me. Stay close," he said firmly. Lyria's eyes were wide with fear, but she nodded. She trusted him completely, even more than the royal guards. Together, they slipped through hidden corridors, avoiding the lasers and traps set by the invaders. The attackers were ruthless. They moved like shadows, masked and silent, striking without warning. The palace guards fought bravely, but the enemy's weapons were advanced, and they quickly overwhelmed the defenses. Ethan led Lyria to a secret room he had discovered during his cleaning rounds, a small chamber with a reinforced door and a few supplies. "Stay here," he whispered. "I'll handle what I can." Lyria shook her head. "No, I won't leave you alone." Ethan smiled faintly. "You stay. I'll keep you safe." He slipped out, moving to the palace like a ghost. Without armor, without weapons, he relied on his instincts. He dodged laser blasts, avoided patrols, and used his knowledge of the palace's secret passages to stay ahead of the enemy. In the main hall, chaos erupted. Guards fought valiantly, but many fell. Alien statues and priceless artifacts toppled. Ethan spotted the enemy commander, a tall figure with red eyes and sharp claws. He was directing the attack with precision. Ethan knew he couldn't fight him directly. Humans were weak by alien standards. But strategy, quick thinking, and creativity were his strengths. He looked around and noticed a series of pipes above the hall, carrying a strange, glowing liquid used for the palace's energy. A plan formed in his mind. He climbed silently, using the shadows and his small size to his advantage. From the pipes, he released the glowing liquid onto the floor, creating a slippery, dangerous trap for the intruders. One by one, they slipped, stumbled, and fell, giving the guards a chance to regain control. The commander roared in anger, noticing the disruption. "Human, you are clever, but cleverness won't save you." Ethan ducked behind a fallen column, thinking fast. He needed something more drastic. He noticed the energy core of the palace, a glowing crystal that powered the security system. With a calculated move, he redirected part of the energy, creating a temporary force field that blocked the intruders from advancing further. Meanwhile, back in her secret chamber, Princess Lyria could hear the sound of battle. The The shouts, the crashes, the roar of anger. She clutched her pendant tightly, praying for Ethan's safety. Hours passed in tense silence. Ethan moved like a shadow, striking here, dodging there, saving guards and protecting innocent staff. Despite being human, he had become the heart of the palace's defense. Every move was precise. Every action mattered. Finally, he confronted the enemy commander in a narrow corridor. The alien towered over him, claws ready. Ethan had no weapons, no armor, but he had courage and quick thinking. "You think a human could defeat me?" The commander snarled. Ethan smiled faintly. Not defeat, survive. Protect. With that, he triggered a trap he had prepared, a cascade of energy beams from the ceiling, knocking the commander off balance. The alien struggled, but Ethan used his agility to escape, leading the commander into a containment chamber designed for dangerous creatures. The remaining intruders, seeing their leader captured and their plan failing, began to retreat. Guards and palace staff, inspired by Ethan's bravery, fought with renewed vigor, driving the enemy away. Exhausted but victorious, Ethan returned to Princess Lyria. She ran into his arms, tears in her eyes. You saved me. You saved the palace." Ethan shook his head. "We did it together. You were brave too." The queen appeared, her eyes wide with awe and disbelief. She had witnessed Ethan's courage, his intelligence, and his loyalty. No human had ever done something so remarkable. "You protected my daughter," she said, her voice calm but filled with respect. "You have shown bravery beyond any soldier I commanded." Ethan bowed slightly. "I only did what anyone would do for someone they care about." The queen studied him long and hard. "You are no longer just a janitor," she said finally. "You have earned a place in this palace by courage, by loyalty, and by heart." Tears filled Princess Lyria's eyes. She had never been prouder of Ethan. He had faced danger, uncertainty, and powerful enemies, and yet he had not faltered. That night, the palace slowly returned to calm. Guards reinforced the walls. Spies were questioned, and the queen began planning for the future. But Ethan did not seek reward or recognition. He cleaned quietly, shared small meals with the princess, and told stories of distant planets and stars. Yet, the memory of the attack lingered. Shadows in the corners, whispers in the hallways, and the possibility of new enemies reminded them that peace was temporary. But one thing was certain. A human, small and ordinary in appearance, had become the protector of an alien princess and a hero of a galaxy. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Ethan and Lyria grew stronger. She trusted him completely, and he had grown to understand her fears, her joys, and her dreams. Together, they laughed, planned, and faced the challenges of the palace with courage. The queen, observing silently, realized that power was not always in technology, armies, or status. Sometimes, the smallest human, with nothing but heart and courage, could change the fate of empires. And somewhere deep within the palace corridors, unseen eyes watched Ethan and Lyria. They had survived this attack, but new dangers were forming. Rivals and enemies would not forget the human who had turned the tide of battle. Ethan, unaware of the threat still approaching, simply smiled at Lyria. "Whatever comes next," he said softly, "we face it together." Lyria nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. "I trust you, Ethan. Always." And in that quiet moment, the palace seemed to glow brighter, not because of the golden towers or the glowing crystals, but because courage, loyalty, and human heart had illuminated the halls in a way no power or weapon ever could. The battle had been won, but the story was far from over. The galaxy had begun to notice the unlikely hero, a human janitor, and the daughter of the alien queen. And as the stars sparkled outside the palace, Ethan knew one truth. Bravery was not in strength, but in heart. And he had more than enough to face whatever darkness came next. The palace was finally quiet. The golden halls, once filled with chaos and danger, now reflected a calm light from the crystal chandeliers. The intruders had been defeated, the spies exposed, and the enemy commander contained. But peace in the alien queen's palace did not mean the end of challenges. Princess Lyria sat by the window, staring at the stars. The night sky seemed brighter than ever, reflecting the joy and relief she felt. She had survived the attacks, her health was restored, And most importantly, she had someone she could trust completely, Ethan. Ethan walked silently into her room, carrying a small tray with simple food, bread, fruit, and a cup of warm tea. Nothing fancy, but to Lyria it was perfect. "You've eaten well today," Ethan said softly, placing the tray on a nearby table. "Your strength is returning." Lyria smiled, her golden eyes shining. "Thanks to you, I feel like myself again." Ethan shook his head. "No, you are the one who survived. I only helped." Her small hand reached out and touched his. "You helped more than anyone could ever know," she whispered. "Without you, I would still be lost." Outside the palace, the queen observed quietly. She had been present during the attacks, watched Ethan protect her daughter, and now saw the bond between them. It was unlike anything she had ever witnessed in her long reign. A human, small and ordinary, had proven himself braver than the most elite soldiers in the galaxy. The queen's voice, calm yet commanding, broke the silence. "Ethan," she said, entering the room. "Come forward." Ethan stepped out from the shadows, bowing slightly. "Yes, your majesty. You have done more than any human or alien could have done. You protected my daughter when danger struck. You saved the palace, and you showed loyalty beyond measure," she said. Her eyes softened as she looked at him. "It is time. You are no longer just a janitor." Ethan's eyes widened. I don't understand." The queen smiled faintly. "You will be given a title, a place in this palace, and the honor of being the guardian of Princess Lyria. You will not be a servant or a guest. You will be family." Lyria gasped, tears welling in her eyes. "Family," she whispered. "You mean he will stay with me?" "Yes," the queen replied. "He has earned it, not by birth, not by blood, but by heart and courage. From this day forward, Ethan is part of our royal family." The princess ran into Ethan's arms, hugging him tightly. You are my family," she cried. Ethan held her close, a rare smile spreading across his face. He had never imagined that a human like him could belong to a royal palace, could be considered family. Yet here he was, honored and trusted, not for power or wealth, but for loyalty, bravery, and love. In the days that followed, life in the palace transformed. Ethan continued his daily routines, cleaning, helping the princess and sharing simple meals, but now he did so as her official protector. Guards and servants treated him with respect. Generals who had doubted him now bowed slightly when he passed. But more importantly, Ethan and Lyria grew closer. They shared stories, explored secret parts of the palace, and even laughed together in ways they had never dared before. The bond between human and alien, once improbable, had become unbreakable. One afternoon, the queen took Ethan aside. "You have done more than anyone expected. But be warned, the galaxy is vast, and not all threats are gone. Your courage will be needed again." Ethan nodded. "I understand, your majesty. I will protect her no matter what comes." Lyria, overhearing them, smiled softly. She had witnessed the courage, wisdom, and kindness of the human who had changed her life. She felt safe, stronger, and happier than she ever had before. The palace itself seemed to celebrate their unity. Flowers bloomed in impossible colors. The crystal chandeliers sparkled brighter, and even the winds that swept to the towers carried a sense of hope and renewal. One evening, as the sun set behind the palace spires, Ethan and Lyria walked together on the balcony. The stars began to appear, twinkling like tiny diamonds in the sky. "You know," Lyria said softly, "I never thought a human could be so brave or so kind. You've changed everything for me." Ethan looked at her, a quiet humility in his eyes. "And you've changed everything for me, too. I never imagined this. A palace, a princess, a place where I belong." She smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "You belong more than anyone ever could." At that moment, the queen appeared behind them. She watched silently, a rare smile on her face. Her daughter was safe, happy, and thriving. And the human who had become their guardian was proving that even the smallest beings could wield the greatest power. Later that night, the palace held a celebration. Servants, guards, and advisors gathered. Ethan was officially named the princess's guardian. A simple human, once ignored and overlooked, now stood proudly among the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Lyria presented him with a small pendant, a symbol of trust and family. "To my protector, my friend, my family," she said softly. Ethan accepted it, holding it close to his heart. "I will protect you always," he said. The queen nodded in approval. "Let this be a reminder. True strength is not an army's technology or power. True strength lies in courage, loyalty, and heart. And today, the galaxy has witnessed it through a human." Weeks passed, and life in the palace settled into a new rhythm. Ethan continued his duties, but now with pride and dignity. Princess Lyria flourished, her laughter and joy filling the halls once again. And the queen, though still a ruler feared by many, had learned a profound lesson that humans, simple and ordinary, could achieve the extraordinary. The galaxy beyond the palace walls continued, vast and unpredictable. Threats would arise, challenges would come, but one thing was certain. A human had proven that heart and courage could change the fate of empires. Ethan and Lyria often sat together on the balcony at night, gazing at the stars. The vast universe stretched before them, full of mysteries and wonders. And though the future was uncertain, they faced it together as family, as friends, as allies. "You know," Lyria said one evening, "I think this palace has never felt more alive than it does now." Ethan smiled, taking her hand. "It's because of us, because we trust, because we care, because we protect each other." Lyria leaned her head on his shoulder, closing her eyes. "I am glad you are here. Always." Ethan's heart swelled. He had come to this galaxy as a simple janitor, unknown and unseen, but had found purpose, courage, and family. And in doing so, he had changed more than just one palace. He had changed a life, and perhaps a galaxy. And as the stars shone brightly above, the palace stood as a testament to an extraordinary truth. Greatness is not measured by power, wealth, or bloodline, but by the courage to care, to protect, and to love. Ethan, the human nobody, had become Ethan, the human hero, protector, and family. And Princess Lyria, once silent and weak, had found not only health and happiness, but the courage to trust, to love, and to hope. Together, they looked at the stars, ready for whatever the galaxy had in store. For now, at least, the alien queen's palace was at peace, and a new family had been formed. A human and an alien, united by heart, courage, and the unbreakable bond of trust.